My Bitcoin Story with me, Dea Kita. And this is the podcast about telling people about their journey of Bitcoin. And then we have a special guest, Jeth Soetoyo from Pintu. Hi, Jeth.
Hey there. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have this talk, especially in the backdrop of the recent announcements from Tesla.
Yeah. This is like
Yeah.
the most exciting time on Bitcoin after like, I don't know how many weeks, like being very stagnant in the 30K. And
Yeah,
after the announcement of Tesla, suddenly, shoo.
exactly. So really excited to have you to be on this podcast.
Yeah. So for those who don't know Jeth, Jeth is the CEO of Pintu and also Rupiah Token. So Pintu is one of the crypto exchange in Indonesia, and then it's one of the biggest crypto exchange as well. So maybe we can start by maybe you can introduce a little bit about yourself and also Pintu and Rupiah Token.
Sure. So Pintu, as you rightly mentioned, is an Indonesian brokerage/exchange for cryptocurrencies. We started launching it in April of 2020, so very recently, but we've grown massively in the past couple of months. And obviously, it's also part of the luck and timing. I guess we caught the right timing there. And our whole goal is to answer the question of how do we bring in the next 10 million people into cryptocurrencies. So for us, it's very much more about catering to the retail users who have never had experience with crypto for the first time. And so we're not really focused as much on traders as some of the other platforms are, but we are really more for the new users and newbies. And before that, we actually did start by building a stable coin. That's how we started our first project in the space. We believe that at the end of the day, you would have cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin that serve as the reserve currency. But you also need sort of like this other type of crypto that could be used for day-to-day transactions, for use cases that are closer to us on a day-to-day basis and which are not susceptible to volatility like what Bitcoin is. And so that's why we started with Rupiah token.
Mm.
And a little bit about myself. I started dabbling in Bitcoin in 2015, and didn't eventually get into the rabbit hole until 2017. And during that time, I think, as you might know, a lot of people were playing the arbitrage game between exchanges, and that's also one of the things that got me really hooked into crypto, because the infrastructure at that time was massively underdeveloped. There were a lot of arbitrage opportunities that you could take in the market, and that's how I started getting into the industry.
You mentioned a little bit that you went into rabbit hole in 2017. So what was like your, I don't know, aha moment about Bitcoin, or what is the lesson that you learned from Bitcoin that lead you to go to this rabbit hole?
Sure. I was reading actually the white paper, and it really struck me that because I understood how financial systems work. Financial systems in the traditional infrastructure was built around siloed databases, right? Each bank, each payments network had their own database. And for them to communicate with each other took a lot of time and took a lot of cost. And so by building on a shared ledger that everyone have access to, and with a monetary policy built into it that is deflationary in nature, is a very novel idea, and I think it's really innovative. And so that's what really attracted me to the concept of Bitcoin in the first place. And then I decided that at that time I wanted to double down on this. I think this is one of the technologies that could really propel the not only economy forward, but like also create a change in the way of thinking for people. And I thought that was really attractive. And so I got into it, around 2017. I started doing some research at MIT in the media lab. I was working with a team with Chris Berniske, actually. We were looking into how do you value a Bitcoin. And at that time, we were looking at it from NVT analysis, network transactions to the value of Bitcoin, and sort of like putting a comparison to MasterCard, Visa, or other settlement networks. Yeah, so that's what I did in 2017, and then around the same time I started taking a job at Consensus, and at that time we looked into cross-chain atomic swaps. So one of the biggest issues I think at that time was a lot of times we depended on a third party to do transactions, right? Whether it's a centralized exchange or a broker in the middle, and there wasn't a lot of transparency. And this was a long time before Uniswap or any of the other on-chain dexes were available. So we were looking into it, and we sort of solved how we could do a trustless swap between the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchain. And yeah, so that was how I got into it. And I was doing this. Thankfully, I was taking my MBA at that time. I was at HBS, and so I took a lot of that time. Instead of going to classes, I still did go to classes, but most of my time outside of class, I pretty much soak up anything about blockchain and Bitcoin.
So you're just like having another master degree on Bitcoin
Yeah,
in
right.
parallel to your MBA. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe talk about your education. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Indonesian listener in here, and you know that a lot of Indonesian kids, they look up to people who have like high education, and in fact, like most high schooler, they dream about studying abroad, and you end up studying in Harvard and also MIT. So how did you end up studying in those university, and what was it like to be Indonesian in this university?
Sure. So just a bit of a correction. I went to study at Harvard, but I was doing some research at MIT. So I didn't actually go to school at MIT, but I was doing some research there. The story behind Harvard was, before then I was a management consultant. I worked a couple of years in management consulting, and then I also spent some time doing some entrepreneurial work. At that time, I was really interested in the energy industry, so I spent some time there. But after like 2-3 years, I figured that I really wanted to take a break, first of all, and I also wanted to dive deeper into tech and into finding something that I think could create an impact in a massive way. And so that's why I decided, to apply to business school, and luckily I got accepted, and yeah, that's the rest was history.
Mm-hmm. And also right now, like maybe we can talk about Pintu itself. Like, I think you mentioned a little bit about like why you want to start crypto exchange and also the Rupiah token. But what was the challenge of setting up an exchange in Indonesia?
Sure. So maybe a bit about the story behind why I even started Pintu, right?
Yeah.
I think, as you know, for a long time, I think there was a lack of on ramps in Indonesia that was really easy for new users. And I say this because of my own experience, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of people in Indonesia share the same thought that a lot of the platforms here are catered towards more pro users, and maybe the interface is a little bit more clunky. And I wanted that experience to be abstracted away, right? I wanted people in Indonesia to be able to buy Bitcoin as easily as they use similar apps in Indonesia that they're used to, like Gojek, GoPay, Grab, or those other types of apps. And so that's why I really started Pintu, because we can't get to the next 10 million people by building platforms that cater to a niche group of users. So we really had to think about how the long tail of people would want to interact with crypto, and so that's why we started Pintu.
And what was the challenges in terms of like setting it up? Because like exchanges are pretty much heavily regulated in Indonesia, and it's still like something that quite new for people to understand. So like, yeah, what was the challenges of setting up an exchange in here?
Sure. I think compliance is a huge issue, like you rightly mentioned, right? We've had to deal with the regulators here who are also new to crypto and who are also new to blockchain. So a lot of the conversations there were really back and forth. We were educating each other. We also learned a lot during the process, right? Of anti-money laundering policies. We also had to learn about uh, customer, sort of like best practices for customers. Whitelisting tokens, blacklisting tokens, putting in enough capital for the company. I mean, there's just a lot of things that you have to deal with getting that license. And that journey was long. That journey was very long. And I remember very clearly, like before that time, I think for a lot of people in Indonesia, Bitcoin was an analogy, or like people think of Bitcoin as like a scam, right? But with the license in place, it brings a lot of credibility and to our space, and I think that was really good actually for the development of blockchain and crypto in Indonesia. And I think this is something that we really need to appreciate as Indonesians, because if you look around there, there's a lot of countries around the world who still have a negative view on Bitcoin, right? Like you were mentioning earlier, like Nigeria just recently came out with sort of like a warning, and also India. So I think that's something that we're really thankful. Other challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis is also like educating the customers. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we faced, because for a lot of people, and especially to the customers that I cater to, we had to explain from the start, like, what Bitcoin is. And even before we have to explain about Bitcoin, we really need to explain about investing, because their financial literacy is still very low in Indonesia. So the concept of investing is also something that we need to educate in turn, to be able for them to then step into the framework of mind where, okay, I'll allocate some of our my own wealth, and so I'll start looking into products, and then we start educating them about portfolio diversification, and then also teaching them about the fundamentals of Bitcoin, why it's such a great wealth preservation as an asset class, and why it's, in my opinion and our opinion, is like a reserve currency in the future. So I think those were like the big challenges in the beginning. And of course, as we grew exponentially, like in the past couple of months, like any other firm in our space, I think we've had to deal a lot with scaling issues on the technical side. And because like going from 0 to 1 is very different than going from 1 to 10. And so that we've also had to learn along the way.
You mentioned a little bit about Nigeria central banks and also India central bank, that if people are know the news right now, like the India central bank and Nigeria central bank imposed law to prohibit people to exchange their money to cryptocurrency. So like, what do you think about this?
So I think, and this is my own personal opinion, I think at the end of the day, governments can try to restrict the usage of cryptocurrencies, but like the saying goes, right? Like water will always find its way, and will flow along its own path. Like you really can't stop water from flowing. I think it's the same with Bitcoin. Even though I think, in my opinion, governments try to sort of like ban it, people will always find a way to use it if there is demand for it, right? If people want it, they will find a way, whether it's like to peer-to-peer trading, whether it's like actually exchanging physically cash for like some Bitcoins. They will find their way, I think. So it's really difficult for you to stop this wave. And I think the best way around it, if I were in the position of sitting in the government, I would take the stance of regulating it, right? I'll put in place the proper regulations to ensure customers' funds are safe, ensure that there's no fraud from exchanges. I think that's the right way to go around it, in my own opinion. But I also do understand, right, why governments do it. It's because at the same time they're losing control over their monetary policy, right? People are starting to use an asset class which they don't have power to control over. And so it's scary because fundamentally for governments, monetary policy gives them sovereignty, right? It gives them power to manage the country and to manage their economies. Without that, it becomes very difficult. So that's my personal opinion about that.
I like your analogy about water because water always flows into a current, and we are talking about currencies, so currencies cannot be
Yeah.
stopped. I like that. So, yeah. So, also, what do you think about the trend of crypto exchange right now in Indonesia? I mean, like,
So
yeah, the exchange or the cryptocurrency as well. So, yeah.
yeah, I think so. Cryptocurrencies adoption in Indonesia right now is about what 2 to 3 million people, probably. It's about 1% of our population. And if we compare that to the states right now is about 30 million people. So, and that's about 10% of the penetration of their population, maybe even more. And so I think, in my own opinion, we're 5 years behind where the states are at, right? The states had their first exchanges pop up in 2013, 2014, and they had their first government license being issued in 2015 with the New York bit license. But for us, everything was like 5 years later. Most exchanges only popped up in the last couple of years. Set aside Indodex, which has been around for quite a while. And our regulation in Indonesia was only implemented in 2019, 2020. And so I think we're going to go into an adoption curve that mimics where the US was 5 years ago, going from about 1 to 2 million to 30 million in the next 5 years. And it's also against a backdrop of a few things going on, right? On the macro view there. We have a lot of tailwinds helping us this time, right? We've got macroeconomic policies that are driving interest rates towards zero and causing people to basically find yield elsewhere other than the existing financial system. People want to get returns on their cash and on their assets, and they're not getting them through the banks. I think the equities market is getting a little bit frothy and it's not as exciting. And so it's natural for people to have their money flow into crypto. And I think this will be a multiplier effect and will go on for quite some time. I think I don't see I don't think I see government stopping their quantitative easing policies and money printing policies in the near term. I think it's going to happen for the next 1 or 2 years. So I think this time I think the party is going to go on for a little bit longer than what we had in the past, whether it's in 2017 or the bubble before that.
And do you see like there's a challenges for like adoption in Indonesia, like a part of the education part, like how it's going to go to that mass exponential growth in Indonesia? What do you see steps that we need to take?
Sure. I think, why don't we talk about it in a few different contexts, or we'll silo it down into a few different aspects. I think first of all, we've got to look into the platforms and infrastructure that helps people get access to it. I think now in Indonesia, we're very much, it's a very much better scene than it was a couple of years ago. You have multiple platforms offering cryptocurrencies with different styles, different user journeys. And I think that helps a lot. And then on the second part, it's more about education. I think we need to have fundamental education. I think a lot of people, even a lot of people who come onto my platform are more speculators, right? People who are in it for the trading nature of crypto rather than a long-term hodler. And so, and then I think it takes time. It takes time for people to switch their mindset from, this is something that I can trade in and out to, okay, this is something that I should hold for the long term because the fundamentals are solid. And it takes a lot of educating users. We've tried doing that, through our social media campaigns or through our in-app educative portal and sharing news in our app. But I think that switch will take time for a lot of people, and I think that's something that we just need to be patient with. And connected to that, right, is also the narrative around cryptocurrencies in the media out there. I think for the past couple of years, the narrative has always been Bitcoin is an alternative asset class. Bitcoin is a bubble, or Bitcoin is something that you can trade in and out, and it's very volatile. But I think the narrative is starting to change. The narrative, I think, is going to change towards this is a reserve currency that people can hold on to, and it's good for wealth preservation, and that Bitcoin and crypto is the future of finance. And that is something that I think a lot of Indonesians still don't grasp yet. But I think we're going to get there in time. If we talk about our own journeys, right there, I mean, I started off as thinking, yes, this is something that we could trade it in out. But after some time spending some time in it, I started to develop this mindset that I think this is it. This is what's going to save us. So changing that mindset will take time and experience, I think.
Yeah. I think this is also very interesting especially with Bitcoin, that everything is all about choice, right? Like no one can force you to buy Bitcoin. It's your choice to buy Bitcoin. And then it's your choice to trade it or not to trade it. And it's your choice to hold it as well, right? So
Right.
I think that's pretty much true what you said, that it boils down to patience, and also people will go on different journey, and then they will
Yeah,
have their own realization at some point.
betul, betul, right, right.
Yeah. So
And
yeah.
yeah, I wanted to share like my own journey was. I remember that time I was listening to a talk. I think it was by Neha Narula. I think she was one of the crypto directors at MIT. She was talking about how currencies were used in the early 1700s. I think it was in the Pacific Islands. People were using stones, right, to trade as currency. And I think at the end of the day, whenever you're dealing with currency, it's all about perception.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about perception of people who are involved in using it and how they perceive it. And so that takes a long time. I think revolutions don't happen overnight, and I think the lasting revolutions take a long time. But if you look at where our trajectory has been in the last 10 years in the crypto industry, it has gone a long way. And if you extrapolate that in the next couple of years, I think it's just a very rosy picture, in my own opinion, of where it's going to go. But it takes time for people to develop that perception.
Yeah, I agree. It is, in my opinion, it's a bright future. So what do you see the future of crypto exchanges in Indonesia then?
Sure. I think crypto exchanges serve a fundamental purpose in Indonesia for as an on ramp for people to have that first experience to go into crypto. So I think it's really good. And looking at that and how underpenetrated we are in Indonesia, I think at least for the next couple of years, I think it's going to be a wild ride for crypto exchanges. Having said that, though, if you believe in crypto, you also believe in decentralization, right? You also believe um, that there should be no centralized party. And I do believe in the future, crypto exchanges, centralized crypto exchanges, to be specific, are going to be at risk of being disrupted, by the decentralized exchanges that are popping up a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you sort of like have to choose between the two, between convenience and sort of like security, right? If you're managing your own keys, it'll probably be a little bit more secure, but you lose that aspect of convenience, right? Because you'd have to like keep your hardware wallet, manage your own private keys, keep your private keys safe. Then whenever you want to trade it or use it, you have to pull it out, and so it's not very convenient. While centralized crypto exchanges still provide a really easy way for people to trade in and out in a little bit more of a user journey that's very simple. And I do think centralized exchanges will also still play a key role, I think, because liquidity is something that's important for you to be an exchange. And right now, I think liquidity is still mostly in centralized exchanges, but I do believe that might change in the future, right? With the advent of automated market makers, um, that might change. And we've seen ourselves, dexes like Uniswap growing exponentially. I think over the last 30 days, they've been dealing more than $1 billion every day. And that's quite impressive. That's quite impressive for basically an entity that has no centralized party, and you can trade trustlessly. Yeah, so that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I see like the time of Bitcoin right now is like the 90s of internet. There are so many possibilities going to happen, things that is like in the 90s or early 2000, like we have MIRC for chat, and then that slowly changed into Yahoo Messenger, and then slowly changed into WhatsApp and whatever we have right now. So I also think like this role in cryptocurrency and in crypto, like the exchange and all these things will still be there, but it will evolve, depend on like whatever user
Yeah,
wants or whatever people wants. Yeah.
right.
And do you see this
Here,
is would be a huge problem though? Like because a lot of Bitcoiner also suggest that, yeah, like never store your Bitcoin in exchange, and then you should move you should self custody your Bitcoin, and then there's a lot of um movement from exchange to private wallets, like if you see like in the chart. So do you see this will be a potential problems for exchanges?
I think there will be a spectrum there. I think there will be people, who still would rather have that convenience, and there will be others who are, security diehards who would keep their own crypto in their private keys. And it happens also with me. I put some of my crypto in my own, you know, um, off exchange wallet, but I do keep some in my crypto exchange. And it also depends on the use case, right? If you're trying to use it and then you have to connect your wallet and move it in and out, it's quite a hassle. And so the way I like to think about it, there's money you keep in your wallet and there's money you keep in your bank account,
Mm-hmm.
right? With cash, it's the same idea. I think at the end of the day, if a centralized exchange has those levels of security in place, managing hot, warm, cold wallets with proper compliance in place to manage those funds, I think it could be to a certain level a little bit more secure than holding it on your own wallet. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if you lose your hardware wallet or if you accidentally destroy your 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 private keys, or uh, you lose those private keys, like it's gone forever. So there is that fear factor as well in putting everything in a hardware wallet.
Mm-hmm. So it's yeah, I agree. It's like depend on use cases and then what you need, right? Exactly.
Right.
So what is your advice for people maybe from Indonesia or for people outside of Indonesia who just started to invest in Bitcoin?
I think um, I think we always try to push forward, safe investing, doing dollar cost averaging when you're trying to buy Bitcoin for the first time. Don't put all your money into it in one go. Invest into it periodically, but consistently. And I think that over time has shown itself as the best way to get into Bitcoin. And part of the reason is always because of the price swings and the volatility. Whenever you want to buy Bitcoin, it's usually when the price is like going up, and then a lot of times you'll catch it at the top and you'll sort of regret it in 1 or 2 days, like why did I put it all at the top? And so we always encourage our users to minimize that regret factor by going in it periodically. That way you'll average into the cryptocurrencies with the mindset of holding it for the long term, right? And if you're holding it for the long term, I think we can all agree that it's an asset class that I think will continue to grow. So the best way is not to go in at the high price, and the best way to do it is to average in over time.
Yeah. And hodling.
and hodling. So I do believe a lot of people who trade in and out, um, a lot of times lose money. Maybe in a bull market, it's easier to gain money, but over time, I think if you trade too much, I think it's really difficult to time the market very well, unless you have a very strong view or you know there's opportunities or information in the market that other people you think other people don't know, and you have alpha. Then I think it's a place where you can, I mean, you can take a bet. But without that, I think it's much more difficult for you to make informed judgment around trading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially like crypto trading is open 24/7, 365 days, right? So there's no stop, like there
Right.
is no break. So it's very hard. Like whenever the US market wake up, the Asian market went to sleep, and then they never like really agree with each other. So that's also creating more stress factor if you're like trading.
Yeah, and I think more than more than anyone, people in our company, like people in exchanges, feel it because you have to be on call 24/7, right?
Mm.
That's one of the drawbacks, but also something that's exciting in the industry. You never get to rest. You never get to rest.
Oh yeah, but this is also what I noticed, especially during this bull run. A lot of exchanges in Indonesia, like they are overloaded with new traffic, kind of like that, or like over traffic, something like that. Uh, what like do you see that's because there's a lot of new people want to join the crypto market, or what caused this over traffic?
Sure. I think throughout the pipeline, from the moment people onboard, there's a spike in onboarding. I think all the exchanges experience this. There's a spike in trading volume as well. And so those two factors just contribute to the overload and traffic on all of these systems. And it's actually not only us in Indonesia, it's everyone around the globe, right? I think even Binance had some issues a couple of days ago. Some of the US exchanges has repeatedly also have a few issues over the last couple of weeks. So it's all over the world. I think it's the same thing. And it's a good problem to have, but it's also painful.
Problems, yeah, it's still a problem that you need to solve.
No problem.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And oh, maybe you have some data, like what is the yeah, the demography of a user of crypto exchanges, like is it like mostly millennials, or like how many percentage maybe there are boomers in
So
Pintu?
actually, quite interestingly, we have about maybe I would say 15 to 20% who are above 35.
Mm.
Um, and so we do see a lot of people, older people, getting interested in cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. A majority of it, I would say, still are around 18 to 25 and 25 to 30. I think that represents about 60 to 70%. But we start seeing a lot of older people coming into Bitcoin. I mean, just the other day, I think actually a couple of months ago, I had one of my friends' mom DM me on Instagram asking about Bitcoin and how she could invest in Bitcoin. And I think with the advent of technology and how much technology has just accelerated, I think to a certain degree you really can't differentiate anymore between Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, or like the boomers. I think it's starting to be. I think older people are starting to get into technology much faster than we think, and I think we're starting to see that in the adoption of crypto as well.
Yeah, I also feel the same because like in class Bitcoin, like I help people to learn about Bitcoin and also to set up their wallet and then buy crypto, and then yeah, also recommend them like with different crypto exchanges. And there are like some people older than 50 who ask about, who become like my client and who I help them to buy this thing. And I found it really interesting that if you can explain it simply to 50 years old then you can explain it to other people.
Right.
Because for them, like, it's so hard to switch the mindset, and especially in Indonesia, like all the older people, like they use WhatsApp or they use like very simple technology. And then, well, I think like maybe for maybe for suggestion, like if we can make the onboarding to be as simply as possible, like how it is with WhatsApp, so then older people can buy crypto. I think that when the mass adoption is gonna come to
Right.
Indonesia. I mean, most people who use WhatsApp are over 50 right now. They just like to chat with each other.
Yeah, betul. 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 And you see it the same way, right? Like with Facebook, it was like first used by young people, and then gradually now I think like Facebook is more used by older people.
Yeah.
I think they're the late adopters, but I do also think that older people now are more open to change rather than not. They understand the impact of technology, and I think they're more open to trying new things than they were a couple of years ago. Um, and I think that's going to happen, continue to happen at least in Indonesia as well, in adoption of crypto. We have a lot of customers now who are even corporates, especially after like what happened with Tesla. There's a lot of corporate companies who are starting to look into crypto and putting that on their balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's the acceleration is going to just increase in the future.
Yeah. Not only just corporate, but also small business owner. I mean, maybe people who are as an individual investor, they see like they have gains and then they own some business. Right now, I also see like there are some like small business owner who put their money aside as a reserve in Bitcoin and then maybe use that for um, like a retirement fund for their employees or for investment, for like future investment. Maybe they want to expand their business, kind of like that. So it's actually a very big opportunities as well in small business.
Actually, I wanted to ask more. How do usually small business owners get introduced to crypto, and how do they usually buy and manage their crypto?
Well, I mean, this is just from my conversation with people who are owning crypto and then they are business owner. So I think their first introduction is just they want to invest themselves as an individual, and then they see the potential of crypto, of Bitcoin, as as an investment that they can utilize in the future. And I found it really interesting, like as well. If we watch the talk between Ross Steven and Michael Saylor from the MicroStrategy Bitcoin for Corporation, like Ross Steven said that if you put your fund in as a reserve for your business, then everything will get cheaper. It's
Yeah,
like you pay salary get cheaper, your rent is gonna get cheaper. And I think this is also an incentive for small business owner. But as from the people that I talk with, they use that cryptocurrency for their retirement fund, for their employees' retirement fund, for expanding their business. If they want to, let's say, want to expand their restaurant, then they need to build house or build a new building, kind of like that. So they put aside and then use it as like a saving thing. So
I
it's
see.
very interesting.
I see. Interesting. And also you sit where do you sit right now, by the way?
I
In
mean, wood in Bali.
right, you're in Bali, and we see a lot of traffic coming from Bali. I think people there, with the exposure to a lot of international travelers, I think it's also a hotspot for crypto, right? I
Yeah.
think it's a yeah.
In 2017, this is like the mecca. Like there's every places accepted Bitcoin. Like you can eat, pay with Bitcoin. You can go to spa and pay with Bitcoin. There are even like Fila who got paid by Bitcoin. I don't know. Maybe the guy right now become billionaire or millionaire. I have no idea right now what's happened. But yeah,
I
it's
think,
very interesting.
and a lot of founders also moved to Bali, and because I think the nature of crypto is also global from day one. You can really work anywhere in the world, right? Be part of the crypto economy. I think I know one of you've heard of MetaMask, right?
Sorry,
MetaMask.
MetaMask.
MetaMask is an Ethereum wallet. That's one of the adopted. I think one of the founders right now live in Bali.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of coins, tokens that are actually developed in here. I also don't know, and suddenly like there are actually multiple gatherings in Bali as well, talking about different cryptocurrency. So yeah, this is a very interesting spot for maybe it's the next citadel for for Bitcoin.
That's true. That's true.
Awesome. So before we close, this is what I want to ask actually. So I read that uh, the official name of Pintu is PT Pintu Kemana Saja, which
Yeah.
is come from Doraemon, like a Japanese cartoon. So can you explain why it's called Pintu Kemana Saja and what is the philosophy behind it?
Sure. Maybe for the audience who doesn't know, Doraemon is like a very popular Japanese cartoon that most Indonesians, I would say, are familiar with and read it when they were young, right? And so in the cartoon series, and Doraemon is like sort of like this blue cat
without ear,
without ears, that has like a magic pocket where he can pull out a lot of like magical stuff. And one of the magical stuff that always comes out of this pocket is this door, and Pintu Kemana Saja is a translation to door to anywhere. So whenever he pulls out this door, like they usually use it to go anywhere in the world at any time, right? And so I see cryptocurrencies as sort of like something exactly like that, right? With crypto, being part of the crypto economy, you can move your Bitcoins or any type of tokens anywhere in the world at any time. And so that's sort of like the philosophy around it and why we name it Pintu Kemana Saja, because once you're on our platform and once you bought crypto, you can send it anywhere in the world at any time, 24/7. And also it lends itself to the name of Pintu, right? We see ourselves as the gateway for people to come into crypto. And so that's like the whole philosophy around it.
And I like it because Doraemon is considered to be like a magic cat because he is very advanced and then have all these tools. And Bitcoin is a magic internet money, so it's very it's very fitting, I think.
Exactly. One of my proudest moments is when I named my company.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this has been very fun. Thank you so much, Jeth, for sharing your stories and also your insight about crypto exchange in Indonesia. And if people want to buy crypto in Indonesia, they can download Pintu at app stores, and also there's a website. Right? Yeah, I think that's how it is. Yeah. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a good day.
Okay. Thanks, Dea. Catch up again.
Thank you for listening to the My Bitcoin Story. Stay tuned for more episodes and click that follow button.